Hey guys, I'm Dan Rodgers with the Key Leadership Inc. and I'm excited about what we get to talk about today. We're going to talk about how to read. How do leaders read? Stick around for just a minute and we will get started. Today we're going to talk about how to read. How do leaders read? I remember a couple of years ago, I picked up this book by Life Leadership, put out by Chris Brady, who wrote the foreword for it. He wrote this book called Turn the Page. I'm going to put the details of how you can order this book in the description below, but I would love for you to pick up this book. One of the most exciting books that I got to read very early in my journey of learning how do people read. How do we read a book? How do people that have success or fruit on the tree in their life, how do they read a book? I have 3 thoughts that I want to share with you today about how to read. Number 1, love reading. Number 1, we need to learn to love reading. Most people that we talk to, and I would dare say the vast majority of people that we talk to will say no to reading. They will say, no, I don't have time for it. No, I don't want to do it. I hate reading books. I can say I was definitely in that part of the world. I remember a day when I remember saying, I hate reading. But now I've learned to love reading. And in a second, I'm going to tell you the other 2. In a second, I'm going to tell you one of the disciplines to learning to love reading. But first, I want to teach you that learning to love reading will separate the doers from the talkers. The people that actually do it and the people that just talk about it. You see, reading will change your life. Reading is something that you add knowledge constantly into your head over and over again consistently. People that have success in their life have written books about it. People that do not have success may have written books also, but it's very important to read consistently and learn to love reading. Learn to love it. And I want to emphasize the word learn to love. It's not something you just wake up one morning and all of a sudden you're reading and you love it. It's something that we learn to do. And it's very important to learn to love the right kind of reading. The Bible teaches a principle of searching for knowledge as for hidden treasures. We must constantly search for knowledge because everybody knows something that you and I don't know yet. So it's important to follow them no matter who they are and follow and find out what it is that person knows. We can avoid a lot of mistakes in our life if we simply learn to love reading, because somebody else may have already made those mistakes ahead of us. Number 2, I want to encourage you to write in your books. Write in your books. One of the most powerful techniques that I picked up from learning how to read was the value of writing in my books. There are thoughts that you will have today that will impact your business or your life 5 years from now or 10 years from now. Those thoughts need to be written down. The best place for me to write my thoughts down is in a journal or in the book itself, because you can go back and reread that book later on down the road, and one day you read it 5 years down the road and you recall that thought that you needed today that you didn't know you would need also in 5 more years. It's important. Learn to write in your books. Use a highlighter. Use a highlighter to highlight different lines in your book that you like. Underline them, circle them, cross them out, things you disagree with, things that you don't even like. Cross them out, get rid of them. Take them out of your mind if you disagree with the author. That's okay to do because it's your book. It's about wisdom for you, knowledge for you. You are the one that is searching for knowledge. We need to be careful about what knowledge we accept. So if there's something you disagree with, cross it out. It doesn't mean you have to get rid of the whole book or discount the author altogether, but there's something you might disagree with that might be against your principles. I learned this also when purchasing books. When I go to Amazon and I go to buy a book, I sometimes like to order a used book, or I go to a used bookstore because somebody else may have written notes in that book that I can use today. That book that I bought for a couple of dollars cheaper than the brand new copy might be more valuable because of the wisdom of another reader in that book. It's important to learn to write in your books. Number one, learn to love reading. Number two, technique is learn to write in your books. And number three, I believe with all my heart that if we learn, number one, to love reading, number two, we learn to write, number three, I think we should learn the technique of simply starting with 15 minutes a day. We don't have to read for hours and hours on end when we get started. How do we learn to love reading? We start with just a few minutes. Because remember, at the beginning, while you're learning to love reading, it first begins with learning to develop the discipline. I remember Orrin Woodward saying a powerful statement a couple of years ago. He said, either you hate changing enough to lose, or you hate losing enough to change. It's important to remember, I must change something in my core discipline of life if I want better results. So the discipline of reading for just 15 minutes a day is important in your journey of learning to love reading. It's very important. Number one, learn to love reading. Number two, under that, I would say learn to write in your books. And number three, learn to start with just 15 minutes a day as a core discipline of reading your books. Read every day. It's important to do that. It's not about necessarily what you read. It's important that you learn the discipline of reading. It's very important. I'm thankful that I got to share this with you today. Check out the description below and order yourself a copy of this book right here. Turn the page. It teaches the principles. How do successful people read books? What do they do? What disciplines do they have? I gave you a couple of thoughts that I learned from that book, but I would love for you to get your hands on this book yourself. Check the description below and order your copy today.